Welcome to Cordkillers Reckoning. The world of entertainment has turned upside down, and we're just trying to find out how to watch what we want, where we want, whenever we want. Where's the good stuff, Brian?
Yeah. And for the record, we've had a lot of people saying that we're a little bit greedy. Oh, you want to watch what you want, when you want, wherever you want, on whatever device you please. To those people, I say, Dad, calm down.
You haven't even watched the rest of the show.
Right.
For goodness sake. Hang in there, because it's time to go on a supply run.
Such as these will affect you in the future.
Disney has officially added Hulu as a category inside Disney Plus. If you're a Disney Plus subscriber and you're in the US, which is the only place the Disney version of Hulu is offered, you'll see it. The company had been testing this for a few months, so you might have seen it before, but now everybody gets it. There's a slightly greener blue tinge and gradient to the Disney Plus logo as well. The idea here is that if you bundle Disney Plus and Hulu in one subscription, you can now access everything from those two subscriptions in the Disney Plus app. It does not mean the Hulu app's going away. Hulu app will continue to exist separately if you prefer to access Hulu content that way. Hulu already includes ESPN Plus content in its app if you subscribe to ESPN Plus. So it seems like only a matter of time before ESPN shows up in Disney Plus. Now, experience-wise, if you have a Hulu subscription attached to your Disney Plus account, you're going to see a tile for Hulu, the way you would for Pixar or Marvel. You click on that, you see the Hulu library of content, both the originals and the acquisitions. If you don't have a Hulu subscription and you click on that tile, they're going to try to sell you a Hulu subscription or a bundle. That's all pretty simple. But David Pierce at The Verge talked to some Disney execs about what it took behind the scenes to bring the Hulu content to Disney Plus. And this is the sort of behind the scenes work that's going to affect your experience for years, and you'll never realize it. One thing to keep in mind, Hulu's been around for 16 years. Most of those 16 years, it was not part of Disney. So it has an entirely different system, or did, of metadata, art, video code encoding, etc. And Brian, Disney could have gone the simple way of saying, okay, when we bring the Hulu stuff over, just re-encode it and then add this extra metadata, and then it goes in the Disney Plus app, which would have meant a slight delay every time you bring something over. It also would have meant every Disney property would have had to be encoded 2 times, as it probably has been already, once for Hulu, once for Disney. That's not what they did. They built everything from the ground up, so they have a single library system for all their streaming content, Brian. Is it genius or super genius to do that?
Okay, so a lot of long timers know and are familiar with the voice of Branding Brian, who hopefully you already know everything he's always said. Now, I would like to introduce a new character, Friction Brian. The reason that Amazon has done so well is because they took the friction of getting into the car, going to Walmart, buying the thing, checking out and all that. And they're like, we're going to take on all that friction. And in fact, we're going to unfairly, in my opinion, reduce it down to a copyrighted, patented button that says the go button, right? This is a version of the same thing. Like, all of this doesn't sound like a lot of work to do, but what it tells me is that Hulu is serious about playing this game, because they are doing the very, very hard work of making sure that all of the thumbnails work on all of the devices. They're making sure that all of the codecs work on all of the devices. They're making sure that all of the licenses are totally cared for. They make sure that all of the people are happy with all of the things. That is an extraordinary amount of friction. And yes, we do have fans who are a bigger fan. We've often said that convenience trumps fidelity. Convenience is the consumer version of friction. If you are experiencing convenience, that means somebody who is not you is experiencing friction and taking that on for you. Am I right so far? Does that track?
It does. I'm sitting here trying to think of good analogies for people who haven't worked at a place who's gone through this. I know there's probably a ton of people in our audience who are like, oh, right. I remember when our company switched from one intranet system to another, and we had to change everything, and all this stuff was broken, and images didn't work, and we had to resize the HR stuff. Like, there's so many examples of this kind of thing, even if you haven't worked in media. If you've worked in media, you almost certainly have run into this at some point, especially if you merged with another company and they're like, well, they have different, asset requirements. So do we maintain our two systems, or do we have to switch everybody over? And if you have to switch everybody over, who gets switched over? And the people that don't want to get switched over resist and try to keep their old systems. It's a nightmare. It is a mess to try to do this. And hats off to Disney. I wasn't wearing a hat, but I'd almost go put one on and take it off for going to the trouble to say, what would be easier to just transcode everything? Let's not do that. Let's do the harder work of bringing everybody onto a single system. And to be clear, I don't think it's rolled out to all parts of the company yet, but the idea is that it will, so that when they ingest the next Marvel movie, it's ready. They could put it on ESPN if they want. Not that they would, but they could. And that's the key, is they have the flexibility now. This story isn't about Disney slowly adding Hulu to Disney so it can get rid of the Hulu app, or even they're going to build one super app for ESPN, Hulu, Disney, and everything else. They can do that now, but they can do it easily. They could also spin out a Pixar app now because they don't have to build a new system for it. Like, the app is just the front end work. Everything behind the scenes makes it super easy to be flexible and offer different things in different markets if they want.
Well, and whenever I think about the challenges of all this, technologically, artistically, getting everybody on the same page, communication wise, and all that, I think we've talked about it multiple times in our After Talk segment, but I don't know that we've talked about it on the main show. We watched the show The Wire, and there's this wonderful moment where a new mayor is coming in. He's talking to an old mayor from a couple of cycles ago, and he's like, why didn't you run again? And he describes a story where, it ends up being search on YouTube for the parables of the bowls of S word. You know what I'm saying. Basically the guy sits down in the mayor's chair, and then in comes this beautiful silver sieve bowl. And he's like, what's this? It's from the unions. And he's like, oh, this looks like, feces. And so it's like, well, what am I supposed to do with it? You're supposed to eat it. And he, to be polite, he does it. And then next in is like, this one's from the ministers. This one's from the blacks. This one's from the whatever it is. And he's like, what's going on? And he's like, you're the mayor. It's your job. And that's what I realized, Tommy, is that's the job. All day you're just eating S word. and to be honest, like, most people read that as a very good reason to not get into politics. I read that as an opportunity, because that's what Amazon did, is they took on all of the friction and decided to eat all of the S word. And it looks to me, this move from Disney Hulu is an indication that they're serious about it. I know there were metaphors upon metaphors, but did that?
And you
track?
called them Amazon at one point. I don't know if you realize that, but
no. But Amazon, that's why they won, is because they took on all of the friction of like being better than UPS at delivering things, Yes.
Yeah. No, I see what you're trying to say now. Yeah, absolutely. And what Disney's doing here isn't going to be visible to you. You're going to still use the Hulu app, and it's going to maybe look a little better because the encoding will be at a higher resolution, or a better compression algorithm. Maybe it might not even be a higher resolution. Just it'll look a little sharper. You will not notice when things show up on time. there's a lot of things you would only notice if they hadn't done this, which is like, wait, why did the latest episode of Fargo not make it to Disney Plus? It's available on the Hulu app. Well, this integration is crap. That stuff is less likely to happen now, and you won't notice it because you'll expect Fargo to be on Disney Plus, and it'll be there because it's all one database. Where you might start to notice it is if they spin up a new fun feature, right? And where they're like, hey, guess what? All the sports movies are available in ESPN Plus, because they can do that on a dime. They don't have to transcode and move them over. People can have ideas within Disney that aren't limited by, yeah, but it'd be a lot of work to convert that video. Or we don't have the metadata. Or I guess we can make new assets if all those arguments go away. So it's not even just friction for the consumer. It's friction internally, I guess, is where I'm getting at.
Well, here in the small town in Texas where I live, they've really embraced the 7 habits of highly effective people. I forget whatever the name is, but one of the 7 habits is begin with the ending in mind. And if you plan to win, it would make sense to right now, take on the very, very hard job of getting all of the video on the same page, getting everything on the same system, creating a style guide that involves you do not get to make a new show unless you have a 16:9, a 4:3, a blah, 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 vertical video version, blah, 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 all that stuff.
I just thought of something too. And it might, this whole process may have been motivated by this in part. Disney is not done acquiring things, are they?
Nope. They certainly
let's say they bought Paramount. I'm not even, I don't even think they're gonna buy Paramount.
Tom? What are you doing?
But what if they did? Or what if they bought Warner Brothers Discovery? It doesn't really matter, but let's just use Paramount for this example. In the previous system, they would look at all of Paramount's content and go, okay, so we have to convert a bunch of it for Hulu and some of it for Disney Plus, and actually a few things might even go into ESPN. Now they just convert it into one thing. They still got to convert it. They convert it into one standard, and they put it on that standard, and it's all in. I'm going to guess there was a little bit of a nightmare in ingesting all of Fox's content that they got when they bought what they bought of Fox. And so they looked at this and said, you know, we're not doing that again. We're going to make that as easy as possible.
I don't know if it'll be the title of the episode, but certainly the title of this segment. I think you and I are grokking the concept of beginning with the ending in mind,
right?
Which means you have to do very, very difficult things, and it's not your job. Nobody tunes into Disney news in order to understand the behind the scenes mechanics of the blah, 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 and why they're doing whatever. No, what you do is you just shut up and do it. And then it has benefits for, 20 to 30 years afterwards.
Yeah. Can you imagine the flexibility to be able to say, hey, you know what? It's the 25th anniversary of Star. Oh, okay. I have to pick a bigger number. The 50th anniversary of Star Wars. Let's make all our Star Wars content available in an ad-supported app for free for the next month. Well, you'd have to develop that app, and then you'd have to collect all the assets, and then now all you have to do is develop the app.
So there
because you've got the back end to just mark all the Star Wars stuff and go send it to that app. Not that developing the app is nothing, but it's like much more possible than it would have been before.
When I was 19 years old, I met my wife working for a stage illusionist. And he was somebody who, before he was doing stage illusions, he did like a balloon art and, for major events or whatever. And he was very, very passionate about the idea of if you have to touch it twice, you've done something wrong. Mm-hmm. And that really affected me and shaped a lot of things going forward. And what I'm seeing with this story, as tedious and painful as I'm certain it is if they're creating a system where they never have to touch it twice, whatever it is, then that tells me that they're serious about this.
Yeah. Now, granted, there's probably some Disney engineer listening to this laughing, going like, "Oh, I wish it worked that well," right? Because nothing ever works quite as smoothly in real life as it does on paper. Granted, there's probably way more databases and metadata and asset collections at Disney than you or I could ever possibly understand, and maybe not all of them get into this. But seriously, just having Hulu and Disney Plus and ESPN on a shared platform, just that alone, even if you forget the studios and some of the cable networks and stuff, like that's going to make a huge difference. So I think this is significant, and hats off to David Pierce as well for digging in and figuring this story out and reporting it on The Verge.
Okay. Can we get to the part where we speculate wildly about what this means?
Indeed. Let's do that now.
Because I've already tipped my hand in that basically all of this is a press release saying, "Hey, we're serious." How did you read it?
You know, I'm probably too naive, but I read it as David Pierce did some legwork to talk to the engineers instead of just the press people or the product manager. And David Pierce knew enough to be like, "But how did you do it?" And David Pierce was a long-lived enough journalist, because he's been doing this longer than I have, to notice like that's really important, whereas a lot of people would have ignored it. So the reason I say that is I didn't see this story taken up anywhere else. This didn't become the thing where TechCrunch reblogged it, and then we saw it on all the Android blogs and Cordkiller News, and you know, it didn't make its way across the internet. So I feel like this is less of a press release that we're serious than it is, you know, some engineers going like, "Man, we did a really good thing, and I bet no one's ever really going to appreciate it," and liking that someone showed interest. On the other hand, as I'm saying that, I'm realizing it doesn't have to be broadcast across the internet to be a very targeted "we're serious" to a very small group of people, in which case it could be both. We're really proud of this, and we're glad that a journalist is interested and gave us an opportunity to let Sherry Redstone know we're serious. Someone just picked a name out of a hat.
That small group of people, I like to call them investors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Investors or strategic partners, or both. Yeah.
No. These are the moves of somebody who is.
You're 100% right. It's about investors, but I think it's also about acquisition targets, to be like, "Hey, if you sell your thing to us, we're not just going to waste it."
This is one of those "if you know things," right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you know, like if you know. By the way, would you like to be a strategic partner?
I mean, we did a lot of hard work here that you don't have to do. Look at that. It's pretty great. Yeah. We have a lot of strategic partners, you and me, Brian.
Man. I was trying to think of a joke and I can't, so take it away, Tom.
That is the patrons. The patrons are our strategic partners. See what I did there? You pay for the show. We make the show. The strategy is to do the show, and you're our partner in doing that. That's what I'm trying to say, Brian.
Yes, and okay. Today we'll both take an L. But the important thing is that if you head on over to patreon.com/Cordkillers, you can keep us loud, live, and independent. And more importantly, not only can you keep us going, but you get us to expand, because in the After Talk segment, which is exclusive only to the patrons, Tom, how excited are you for the full experience? Like I'm trying to be cool about it, but it's like secretly I'm just like,
It's one of the best things we've come up with in a long, long time. And we've been doing this a long, long time. We've come up with some pretty cool stuff.
Do you want to pitch the full experience to folks, because we don't know?
Yeah, real quickly. If you're an After Talk patron, you already know this, so apologies. But those of you who aren't patrons yet, full experience, which you get earlier as a patron, is our dissection of historic television shows by watching the first, the ultimate, aka the best rated, the lowest rated, and the last episode of a series, FULL, to get a slice of what that series was like. We've done it with The West Wing, we've done it with Cheers, and we're in the middle of doing it with $6 Million Man. And it really gives us an overview of what these shows were like in a way that nothing else I've ever done does.
My favorite part is that it's like we get the smug satisfaction of like anytime somebody mentions a show, it's like, oh yeah. I mean, I got the full experience on that one. Here's my opinion. And it's all because we figured out this first, ultimate, lowest, last formula.
Indeed. So get that early, get After Talk, where we like debate what the next show should be in the full experience, as well as talk about the strategy of Cordkillers in general. Become a patron at patreon.com/Cordkillers. Time for the search party. So Peacock is getting an exclusive game. Remember, we had Peacock got an exclusive NFL playoff game at the end of last season.
Yeah.
Well, now they are getting an exclusive Week 1 NFL game. The NFL occasionally does one of its first regular season games overseas. They've done them in London. They've done them in Germany. This year they are doing a game in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And that game will be carried on Peacock exclusively Friday, September 6th. And Amazon is going to do the wild card playoff game, the similar version to what Peacock did in the playoffs this year. Next year, Amazon will exclusively carry a wild card playoff game. So baby steps towards moving NFL broadcasts from cable and television to cable television and streaming. And then eventually probably just streaming.
This is the part where I admit that I don't know, is this an exhibition game or a league game or an official season game?
Week one NFL means regular season. I thought I said regular season when I was talking there, but yeah, if that was lost, it's a regular season game.
Why is it not in America?
Because they do this to spread the love. A bunch of leagues do this. The Major League Baseball just opened its season in Korea. To try to get an international audience interested in the league. The NBA has done this too, where they play games overseas. It's just kind of a fun thing to be like, this is bringing an international sport to your home. You can attend in a way that you couldn't otherwise, and it counts. It's part of the regular season.
Quick aside, just in case anybody is confused, like, Brian does business lunches by himself with a cell phone, handling things, usually at a sports bar and grill, surrounded by all of the sports monitors. So as a result, I have a very strange association. Like, I know the shape and face of very many people who talk about sports. I know headlines, but I do not know any of the rules of sports. So forgive me if I sound stupid, because I'm stupid.
Oh, I don't think that was a stupid question at all. If you're not following the sport, you may wonder, like, why are they going internationally? I think that's a fair question. It is a different kind of game. It takes place at a different time, right? Because you have different time zones involved. Although Brazil, because it's in the same, longitude, probably not that going to be far off time-wise. But they are an interesting game to give to streaming because it's a special event game, even though it's a regular season game.
Yeah.
Audible and Amazon and MGM, Amazon's MGM, are partnering to develop TV series based on podcasts, Audible original podcasts such as The Prophecy, Hot White Heist, and others. Shows could also spread beyond the Amazon streaming properties. So you might assume that they would make these for Prime Video or maybe MGM Plus, and you'd be right. But the idea is that not every show they make based on one of their own podcasts would necessarily have to live on Prime Video. They could shop them out elsewhere.
I actually have a lot of thoughts on this, but we realize that organically there's an opportunity to talk about them later. So I won't say much about this. Good job, Audible. That's what I say.
Well, are we talking about that thing you want to save it for like next? Like,
yep. Yeah. So you want to just go right into it?
Well, yeah, it seems like we've made it a little awkward here by telling people like, I have thoughts, but I'm not going to tell you until
Let's make
2
it
seconds
more
later.
Awkward. Also, I'm not wearing pants.
Buried treasure. Brian, how does Alive in Joburg relate to the Amazon MGM Audible podcast strategy?
Okay, so I'm continuing to learn more and more about how traditional Hollywood production works, and by Hollywood I mean like all of like big name production. And I learned about co-productions. Those are things where maybe somebody who owns a property decides to let somebody else help out financially, and then spread out parts of it on there.
So that would be the analog to the podcast thing that we just talked about, right? It's
exactly.
A co-production. Now, granted, the story we're talking about, it's all in the same company, but a co-pro usually isn't in the same company necessarily. But it's saying, hey, I've got a podcast and I want to turn it into a TV show. You're a TV producer. Let's co-produce it.
Right. And I guess if we're going to be as simple as possible, small thing becomes big thing because people allow small thing to exist to become big thing, right? Over this weekend, I revisited one of the best examples of it that I've ever seen. Neil Blom. I could just keep saying Blom. Neil Blomkamp created something called here. I'll take the
Blomkamp.
Blomkamp. So before there was the movie called District 9, which has a 90% Rotten Tomatoes upvote. He made I think it's a 8-minute movie or something called Alive in Joburg. And it was so low budget that I learned about a new category called micro budget movies, like not just low budget, but not just indies, but micro budget. And of course, nobody wants to talk about just how low the budget was, but it was also a co-production. So that means not only was it extremely low budget, but it was a co-production, which meant that everybody was splitting the bill.
It was 6 minutes long. Can you believe that?
6-minute long movie. It's amazing. In fact, if you're listening, press pause, just go to YouTube and look up Alive in Joburg and understand he did maybe one of the smartest moves I've ever seen in science fiction production. He interviewed people and asked them to talk about I'm not really familiar with, everything about apartheid and who's the invader.
He asked them to talk about apartheid and got their answers about apartheid. And then he used those answers to apply to a science fiction setting, right?
Correct. And basically he just said well, what if they were talking about aliens? And then he put together Alive in Joburg. So let's for sake of argument say that cost $20 and a taco. But it led to District 9, which I rewatched yesterday. And oh my God, Tom, watching Alive in Joburg and going straight to District 9 is one of the tastiest experiences, because not only is Alive in Joburg audacious, ambitious, and incredible, but you go into District 9 expecting it to be Alive in Joburg, and instead it becomes 3 totally different movies. It starts off as Alive in Joburg, which is the movie I thought I was going to watch. Then it becomes The Fly, by Cronenberg. Then it becomes something else, and I'm not even going to say what it is because you've seen the movie and you know how it ends. Chef's kiss. The idea that anybody can be a gatekeeper nowadays. If you have a good story, you can start with very, very little and end up with something as good as District 9 is.
And I mean,
that's the end of my sermon, I guess.
It propelled him to make a lot of other movies, many of which you probably haven't heard of or have seen poorly reviewed. But most recently, he made Gran Turismo, which
that's right. Which has only been promoted for like an entire year. What with the pandemic and all that.
So, 6 minutes of taco based work and inspiration led to a pretty long career, even if it's an inconsistently reviewed output.
Have you seen Alive in Joburg?
I have, yes, but I remember nothing about it. So it's as if I haven't seen it. I know I've seen it.
Well, and it's old enough, 10 years or whatever. It's old enough that I had forgotten, oh my God, this is great. I wonder how good District 9 holds up.
How does that hold up? Yeah.
Very good.
Well, and District 9 is almost made as a period piece, albeit 2009. So I could see where the production values wouldn't really get in your way because you're like, oh, this is just what was happening on Earth in an alternate 2009.
Well, and on top of that, you have unknown actors for the most part. You have unknown director. The only name you know is Peter Jackson Presents, and if you like surprises, please watch these two things in the order that I told you to. Outside of that, I think my moral responsibility is to stop talking.
I almost feel like they should just append Alive in Joburg to the beginning of District 9. Like that should be a director's cut because it's 6 minutes, for goodness sake. Just put it there as a pre-roll.
Well, and it does its own extraordinary Evel Knievel jump, and then District 9 does the most extraordinary Evel Knievel jump that I've seen in science fiction. It's incredible.
Well, cool. That's a great one. And a great example of literally buried treasure, right? In that, you don't hear as many people talking about this anymore. So having dug in and realized that it still holds up is really interesting. It makes me want to go check it out again myself. I'm going to take us in another direction for my buried treasure. It is on Netflix. I'm about halfway through this one. I can't remember if I mentioned it on Buried Treasure or just mentioned that I was watching it elsewhere. But it's a Korean show called Queen of Tears that is much more than you think from the description. It is Succession meets terminal illness story meets typical rags to riches romance story. And my wife and I were watching this and we're like, how are they going to stretch this to 16 episodes? And in the episode that aired on this Sunday and then came to Netflix this past Sunday, we understood. And it's not in any way similar to District 9, except in as much as I can't tell you why it's such a good twist without spoiling the twist. But it starts as this, working class guy from a farm town that has pears and apples, has worked his way up in Seoul, and he meets a woman who's an intern who's, just always messing up. And he's so kind to her that she falls for him. He takes her back to meet his family. Everything's going well. And then he finds out that she's the daughter of the CEO of the parent company of his company. She's chaebol. She's an heiress in the corporate world. But she marries him anyway. However, our story really starts with them not getting along. They hate each other now. And the story at first is, why did they get together in the first place then? What happened to make them hate each other? And then you find out that she has a terminal illness. How's he going to react? How does he change? What's going to happen? He has prepared some divorce papers that he never presented to her because she said she has this terminal illness. The terminal illness has the weird effect of causing her to just have missing time, where she's doing something and the next thing she knows, she's like somewhere else and she doesn't know how she got there. That's all the first couple episodes. Then you have this whole like plot to steal the company away from her grandfather, and a plot to ruin him and drive a wedge between him and her. And they already hate each other, but then they don't hate each other. And then you get to the middle of it and you find out that there's a whole other second story that's going to be told over the second half of the season. So if you're into any of this, check out Queen of Tears on Netflix.
Is this one of those stories where I know they're popular now, but like power dynamics really play into them? Or
yes, that is part of one or two of the stories, right?
Okay, but there are multiple layers.
She runs the department store that he's the legal, the department store chain, right? That he's the chief legal officer of. So there's, she has all the power in the relationship kind of thing. There's definitely a lot of stuff about, is he just marrying her for the inheritance? And he, makes sure to write himself out of the will at one point, to show that, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a fun twist that I don't hear as often as I'd like, is like, she's the one in a position of power. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So that's Queen of Tears on Netflix. If you got something you think we should be on the lookout for, please email us cordkillers@gmail.com, or just come up to us at Founders Day, Brian, when we're standing around chatting.
Tom, have I told you my new favorite phrase? Go ahead. Ask me anything.
Brian, what's your new favorite phrase?
Oh my God. That's great. I'll get you an answer after the eclipse.
Yes. I 1,000% understand what you're saying. Like, I'm surprised you're talking to me right now about anything other than the eclipse. Yeah.
So, for the uninitiated, we bought this place, we rehabbed it, we built it up, we spent all of my family's money, and one of the down the road things was, well, let's have opening ceremonies on April 8th, because Brian, for whatever reason, one night figured out that there's going to be a eclipse on April 8th in 2024, infinite in the future. Guess what's next week, Tom?
That very eclipse, that called shot that you made. Yeah, it's happening.
So now I'm very consumed with the logistics of making sure that everybody is fed, is comfortable, has a place to stay, and has talented people surrounding them. I am still, I hesitate to admit, withholding some of the names of people who will be here. I am still withholding details on the VIP event, but I can tell you that we have about 10 slots left and about 20 slots left for the VIP event, to which literally last night we added another part of the VIP event. But I can confirm that, two things. Number one, whatever tickets are left, you could go to foundersdayeclipse.com and you can grab one of them, whether it's for the eclipse itself or so on. Number two, my God, Tom, the world has gone insane. We're like, I feel like, do you remember Y2K?
Yeah.
Like, what if you were preparing for Y2K, but you were right? That's what it feels like right now. We have a stack of beverages the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. We have toilets and showers and places to camp and everything. Like, the state or Travis County has declared an emergency weeks in advance. It's gonna be amazing. And can I tell you my favorite part?
The state of emergency being not that Brian is holding an event, but that so many people are coming for the eclipse, right?
Correct. My biggest fear, and I might have spent over a year just thinking about this, and it was one thought. It was like, what if it's cloudy? What if it's cloudy? What if it's cloudy? And the answer eventually appeared in a dream. The answer is, if it's cloudy, have a performance that is so good and also dependent on the eclipse that nobody will mind that it was cloudy. And right now, there's a 30% chance of thunder showers 1 week from today, but I have secured our friend George Schwab, who is going to perform the entirety of Dark Side of the Moon, ending with the track called Eclipse, with its transcendent 3/4 time summary of what it's like to be alive. And when he speaks the word down to the second, everything under the sun is in tune, but the sun is eclipsed by the moon. There might be thunderstorms, which would
It might be fun. Oh man, if there was thunder,
make it better.
yeah. And it's gonna go dark, and if it's already a little dark, it's gonna get darker.
In fact, actually, you'll get a better experience than everybody else who only got mostly dark. You'll get all the way dark.
You're getting like complete dark
and lightning.
I can't wait. I am so looking forward to it. I actually even got a car somehow. I don't know how.
From a little rental company called U-Haul.
No, I didn't have to go that far. But yeah, it took a little, what if I say I'm going to return it on this date, even though I'm going to return it before then? Oh, now they have a car sort of situation. So yeah, cars are hard to find in the Austin rental park market right now because everybody's going to drive to see the eclipse. They just need to look up.
We're down to the last 10. I highly encourage friends of all of us to go to foundersdayeclipse.com.
Let us bring on the eclipse. Join us, won't you? All right, time to scan the horizon.
For an eclipse.
That's here in a week from now.
Was that the ending of Dark Side of the Moon?
Yes, it might have been. Hulu with live TV has added the MLB Network. That's Major League Baseball's self-run network. It has lots of news shows and shows games itself and all of that. It now is alongside Sling TV and Fubo and DirecTV Stream as the cable replacement streaming services that have the Major League Baseball network as the Major League Baseball season begins. But the big daddy, the one with the most subscriptions, YouTube TV, does not have this network. So if you're a big baseball fan, kind of makes it hard to justify YouTube TV, but you can pick from pretty much anything else.
As, again, not a sports guy, but Tom, am I wrong in remembering that baseball has been maybe the most progressive of the streaming services to get ahead of the game? Like they built an entire streaming infrastructure.
Oh, that back end that we were talking about earlier that Disney was reworking?
Exactly,
yeah, that's
right.
built on BAM Tech, which was once MLB AM Tech, Major League Baseball Advanced Media.
Right. So, oh, great Oracle, tell me how I should read these tea leaves in your
I don't know what
opinion.
Larry Ellison has to do with it, but I'll answer the question.
Okay. I'm sad that I'm literally sad that I got that joke.
No. MLB Network. You know, the way to read these tea leaves is that YouTube TV knows it has lots of leverage because it's the most popular one. MLB knows it has lots of leverage because baseball's still pretty popular. It may not be the NFL or the NBA, but it's still pretty popular. And so these two giants can't agree. It is interesting to see Hulu finally agree. That implies that there's a way forward, that Disney was able to say, all right, fine, we'll pay you this much. MLB wants more. all of these streaming services got screaming deals in the early days when nobody was subscribing to them. And so now that they're getting, a larger amount, the networks want the kind of money they were getting from cable to keep them going. So, keep in mind, this is MLB Network, a cable television network that we're talking about. We're just talking about putting it on streaming services instead of on cable TV.
Well, all of this feels like, and we've talked about this 10 years ago about like the entanglements of the agreements that everybody had made with cable and so on. It feels like now everything's a little bit flexible and we're starting to see a consolidation, a gravity well.
And you're seeing a lot of people use that to be like, well, you need to give us a better deal on both sides of the issue. Right?
I'm certain that's part of that. However, I don't think that changes the fact that that things are about to consolidate, and it's really a question of just where.
What I don't understand is why MLB hasn't made more moves, and they've made some, but they haven't made more moves to just make MLB Network available a la carte, just through their app. MLB's app has so much video. You can watch full games as long as they're not blacked out in your local market, and they're even trying to get around that as much as possible. They have highlights, they have compressed games, they have some of their news shows from MLB Network. Like, I'm just surprised they haven't just been like, fine, as part of your subscription to MLB, which you're already paying for to get games, we're going to throw MLB Network in there too, and then recoup some ad revenue off of that.
That's really interesting. Big. Okay, maybe after talk.
Yeah.
I have thoughts on this.
Couple other things here. Several sources tell in Deadline that the Alamo Drafthouse cinema circuit is up for sale. Of course, Alamo Drafthouse, headquartered in Austin, where Brian is. We both went to the one and only Alamo Drafthouse back in the 90s when it opened up, but it has since expanded to 41 locations across 13 states. I think Deadline said about 17 of those are franchises, but Alamo Drafthouse owns the rest of them themselves. And the news of this is coming less than a week now before CinemaCon, the major studios and exhibitors annual Las Vegas conference. And Deadline is saying that studios have heard the sales pitch and no bidders yet, but maybe at CinemaCon, somebody buys Alamo Drafthouse Cinema.
I spent one night with Tim League, the creator of the Alamo Drafthouse, right? And he was and is a cool cat. It also seems as though the Alamo Drafthouse truly has been from the beginning a labor of love. I would not be surprised if a human being who created something wonderful at some point just wanted to cash out.
Yeah.
We've talked before about their unfortunate franchising agreements where it's like you could very much tell which were the real draft houses, which were the not real ones. They did some kind of roping in of getting everyone on the same page. But I mean, for my money, I would not blame somebody for creating something wonderful and just wanting to enjoy the rest of their lives.
I have to say it's an interesting development because you might say like, well, who wants to run a theater right now when they're in decline? And you wouldn't be far off. But the dine-in theaters, which Alamo Drafthouse is an example of, are the ones
one of the progenitors of
are the ones that are doing well. So you look out and you see some of these theaters that are bringing people in and be able to charge higher prices. It's the ones that give you extra. And like you said, Alamo Drafthouse pioneered giving you extra. It's funny. My perception of Alamo Drafthouse is formed by the fact that I lived in Arlington, Virginia in 1993 and went to the Arlington Drafthouse. It was the first time I had ever gone to a movie theater where they would bring you food to your seat and they had pizza and beer. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, why don't we have this in the rest of the world?
Wait.
And then like a year later, I don't remember exactly, but within a couple of years, Alamo Drafthouse opens in Austin. And I was so excited that this thing I had experienced in Arlington, Virginia, now had an example in Austin. And I was like, man, why don't more places do this? Like, I'm so glad Austin has one. So I've always thought of Alamo as being somebody who took the Arlington game of like pizza and beer and elevating it. And it's like, but what if it was good food and better beer? And then not only that, they added on the idea of like, and what if we loved cinema? And what if we showed that? And we set you up to enjoy the movie you're about to see.
That's the most important aspect, and the secret of the sauce that I think made Alamo Drafthouse such a valuable brand is that almost like I had heard about movies that would serve beer while you watched the movie, but they were always like dollar cinema. And back in the days of film, that meant that film that had been gone through the ringer a few times and as a result was degraded. You would always have lines and dots and all of that stuff. The idea,
if you remember, Alamo Drafthouse had all the dollar cinema stuff during the early part of the evening, but what was more popular was they would do like weird documentaries and cult films and things like that later in the evening, and that's where they started to make their name.
Well, I one of the most precious moments I saw at the Drafthouse was of all things, Flash Gordon. They said like, and they took 5 to 10 minutes of the guy talking on a mic saying, guys, you're not going to believe this. We got an extraordinary cut of Flash Gordon. It's unfortunately a Norwegian print, so there's going to be Norwegian subtitles on the bottom, but it looks beautiful. Like that focus on the quality, the fidelity. And again, this show has always been about convenience versus fidelity. The fidelity was so good. It was one of the most precious things that I ever saw at a Drafthouse.
So who do you trust to buy it? Let's just assume that Tim League has to sell. It's just for whatever reason. Who do you trust to buy it?
Richard Garriott.
Interesting. So not an existing distributor.
A new player enters the arena.
Rather, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. New player.
Or maybe what's his name? Randy
Savage.
No, he's dead. The guy behind Borderlands, the guy who bought the Magic Castle, Randy.
Don't know.
Doesn't matter. Everyone's going to get mad. Cordkillers@gmail.com.
Sorry. I did.
I did a gig at his house. I should know this.
You're on a first name basis, not a last name basis.
Yeah. I think not only will it be, but it should be an outside player.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. They Variety or Deadline seems to think it's gonna go down at CinemaCon.
Randy Pitchford. There we go.
Yeah. Randy Pitchford. Thank you, Gambling Man. All right. Final thing is I have been beating the drum for years now that once the Hulu ownership was settled, which it was at the end of last year, and Disney owned all of it, once the contract restrictions on selling Warner Brothers Discovery expired, which they do this month, we would start to see the consolidation happening, and we are starting to see the drumbeats of the consolidation happening. Sherry Redstone owns National Amusements, or is president of National Amusements, and National Amusements wholly owns Paramount. Last week, we talked quite a bit about the idea that someone offered to buy just the Paramount movie studio away, and we thought we should follow up because Variety had a really good article explaining that their sources say Redstone is not interested at all in selling at Paramount in pieces. They want to sell it entirely. They want to keep a stake, but if they sell it, they want to sell it entirely. And in fact, apparently the preferred path at the moment is a merger with Skydance, which would beef up Skydance and give Skydance a bigger table to play in. That doesn't feel like an end move. That feels like a a pre-move to another sale. Like you merge with Skydance to make Paramount even more valuable, and then you sell it.
Yeah, and there's the perspective as a consumer, and then there, as a consumer, it's like, just give us the good stuff. But then as if you're watching two people play chess, I think it's very smart to refuse to not sell Paramount Plus or whatever as one as anything.
Well, yeah, it's not just Paramount Plus; it's the studios and the CBS networks and Nickelodeon and MTV and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Once you start chopping, it never stops stopping.
That's what they say. That's the old saying.
That's the old saying. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My grandma used to say that all the time. Once they start chopping,
Meyer.
they never stop stopping.
Yep. Lunchables.
Yep. This matters to you because where Paramount ends up is going to affect where the shows you like to watch on Paramount are going to end up, like Detroiters.
And there's more of them than I would have thought.
All right, let's move on to the chatter. Hey, killers, writes TJ Asher, regarding the email on the length of pre-movie trailers and such before Dune Part 2. I like to play a game with my wife, and we make guesses as to how many trailers we will see before the actual movie. The norm is 6 or 7, with the occasional 8 for a big movie. Dune Part 2 had 10 trailers. I knew going in there'd be a lot, but that was insane. The actual start time of the movie for me was 30 minutes after the posted showtime.
Okay, so let's you and me play a game. And anybody who wants to write in at cordkillers@gmail.com, is that good or bad? Because to be honest, it felt really good to be back at the movies, having an exciting time, seeing a bunch of pitches for other movies.
10 starts to feel like too much, though. Like there is a point where you're like, it's like, oh, this is fun. Oh, this is exciting. At 5, you're like, oh, so many trailers, so cool. Then you start to get diminishing returns, I think. So your mileage may vary though. Cordkillers@gmail.com. Let us know. We also got an email from Norm. Says, hey, all. I drove by the Cinemark in Ann Arbor earlier in this week and told my kids I saw the Phantom Menace there at a midnight show and told them, yes, I used to love Star Wars before becoming disenfranchised by the whole franchise. Flash forward to today, where I caught up on the news about the same movie being re-released and Tom and Brian talking about the same thing. Funny thing about timing. Thanks for coordinating the story around my vacationing. P.S. I watched the Furiosa trailer without you. I'd have known nothing about it. Creators curating creations.
Okay, first of all, the only thing that upsets me about this email is that you weren't constantly talking about how good Andor is and how great Tony Gilroy is.
Indeed. And then David in Wisconsin, I don't know how much of this you want to let on, Brian, but
whatever.
He's debating on whether, because there are no cars available for rent in Austin, Texas, if maybe he should just drive from Wisconsin down to Austin to attend the Eclipse events. And if he does, he's going to bring us an old slider cable box.
Okay. When he wrote those words, slider cable box, he also followed it up with like, I'm going to include a picture in case you don't know what I'm talking about. And I was deeply offended. Like, you think I don't know what a slider cable box looks like? And you think it wouldn't be a deep, deep honor for me to have it live here at Monteroga headquarters? Are you kidding me? Let's take, because I think we have like 3 minutes, let's take a brief sojourn on the space of like, what are the different ways you remember cable as a kid? Because they were
sure, yeah.
Clicky
I
dial.
never had the slider box, although I knew some people in a neighboring town that
it was
did.
always somebody else, right?
Yeah. We had the dip switch box, right? So
What?
the cable went into an adapter that then screwed into the antenna screws on the back of your TV. But that cable connected to a dip switch box. And you would turn to, I believe, the UHF channel, or maybe it was channel 3. Oh, no, it was channel 3. You would turn to channel 3, and then you could select the dip switches to get 19 more channels. So you had channels 2 through 13 on their normal channel, except for channel 3, which would show you all of the like channels 13 through 24 or whatever it was.
Now, when you say dip switches, you don't mean like the micro, like on the back of a graphics card ones.
Oh, no. They were like just big, like, you know, like a light switch, but smaller.
Okay. There are things I want to say, but I feel like I should save them for after talk because they mostly involve figuring out that an analog signal, if you twisted the finesse on the television, you could get scrambled channels.
Oh, yeah. Channel 14 was HBO.
I'm just saying,
Channel
it
15 was
would only
Cinemax.
be black and white, but it was Channel 18 in Houston. That's fine.
Just
Okay,
right.
all right.
We can watch Strange Brew and The Shining. I'm told. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We're live at twitch.tv/Night Attack Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I reckon we'll talk to you next time. Yes, BioCow. That's the exact one.
Oh, wait.
Well, I don't know if it's the exact one.
You did the thing where I'll have to edit it.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm going to leave this in, and I'm just going
Thanks,
to say,
BioCow.
you're great, Tom.